They know you're the chosen one before you do, and that's why they fear you. There are moments in life when you look back and realize that the signs were always there. The strange looks, the unspoken tension, the inexplicable resistance. You didn't understand it then, but now it begins to make sense. They saw something in you long before you ever did. Something powerful, something different, something they couldn't name, but they could feel. And it scared them. You see, there is an energy that surrounds those who are chosen. It isn't loud or flashy. It doesn't beg for attention, but it walks into a room before you do. It unsettles the insecure. It disturbs the fake. And it exposes the intentions of those who never wanted you to rise. Even as a child, you felt it. The isolation. The feeling that you didn't quite fit. The way people treated you like a threat, even when you had no intention of threatening anyone. They pushed you away not because you were weak, but because they sensed what you would one day become. The world has always feared what it cannot control. And you, the chosen one, were never meant to be controlled. Before you knew who you were, before you found your purpose, before you discovered your voice, they already knew. Not consciously, perhaps, but at a soul level, they recognized the fire in you. They recognized the call of destiny written into your very being. And in that recognition, their fear was born. Fear that you would outgrow the boxes they try to keep you in. Fear that you would see through their manipulation. Fear that you would wake up and lead others to do the same. And so they tried to dim your light. They ridiculed your dreams. They isolated you. They made you question your worth. Not because you had none, but because you had too much. They hoped that if they buried you deep enough, you'd forget who you were. But they didn't realize that some seeds are only activated by pressure. Some souls need the dark to awaken. Some callings are born through pain. This message is not for everyone. It is for the one who's always felt different. The one who's been attacked without cause. The one who's been misunderstood, underestimated, and overlooked, yet still stands. You didn't come this far to give up. You came to rise into what you've always been. And no matter how much they fear you, the time has come for you to stop fearing yourself. Because the truth is simple. They knew you were the chosen one before you did. And that's why they feared you. The silent recognition, they knew before you did. They knew. Long before you had language to describe who you were, they already sensed it. Before you ever stood tall in your purpose, they had already decided to push you down. You thought you were just being left out, just being ignored, just being judged for nothing. But the truth is more profound, more unsettling. They were responding to something you hadn't even discovered in yourself yet. That is the strange burden of being chosen. You walk into rooms and feel the temperature shift, not because of what you say, not because of what you do, but simply because of who you are. People recoil. Some grow quiet. Others lash out, unprovoked. And you're left wondering, what did I do? The answer is, you existed. There is an energy within you that cannot be hidden. It's older than your name. It precedes your birth. It's an ancient echo from somewhere beyond this world. And even though you didn't hear it at first, they did. They didn't hear it with their ears, but their spirit felt it. And that terrified them. Because the world isn't built to welcome the chosen. It is built to contain them, distract them, delay them, and if possible, destroy them before they remember who they are. As a child, maybe you felt like you didn't quite belong. You tried to blend in. You tried to be like everyone else. But no matter how hard you tried, something set you apart. And not in ways that were always easy to celebrate. You weren't the most popular. You weren't always praised. Sometimes you were mocked. Sometimes you were silenced. Sometimes you were made to feel like your presence was a problem, like your very existence was too much. You didn't understand why. You were just being yourself. But now you're starting to see the truth. Your presence carries weight. Your soul has depth. And those who live on the surface feel threatened by that. People don't attack what doesn't matter. They don't resist what isn't going anywhere. But the chosen ones, even when silent, even when still, stir the atmosphere. That stirring unsettles people who have built their lives around illusions. It challenges their comfort, their control, their false sense of security. So what do? They project. They shame. They exclude. Not because they're stronger, but because they're scared. And here's the paradox. You thought their rejection meant you weren't worthy. But it was actually the clearest sign that you were. You thought being misunderstood meant you lacked value. But it was their limited understanding that couldn't comprehend your depth. The truth is, they knew something powerful was planted inside you. They just hoped it would never grow. Look back. Look at the patterns. How many times were you cast out for telling the truth? How often did people label you as too intense, too different, or too much, when in reality, you were just real? The world has a hard time digesting what is real. It prefers comfort over truth, appearance over substance, control over freedom. And when you walk in carrying truth, substance, and a liberated spirit, you become dangerous. But not dangerous in the way they say. Not destructive. Not reckless. You become dangerous to the systems of manipulation. You become dangerous to the games of control. You become dangerous to those who rely on your silence to maintain their power. They knew you were a mirror. They knew you would reflect what they were hiding. And so they feared you. Not because you were evil, but because you carried light. And light always exposes darkness. This is why the chosen are often the most attacked. This is why the chosen are misunderstood, targeted, and sometimes even hated, without ever doing anything wrong. It's spiritual warfare before you even know you're a soldier. It's a battle for your identity before you even realize you have a crown. And the hardest part is, in the beginning, you don't know. You don't know why people are acting strange. You don't know why your relationships keep falling apart. You don't know why doors shut in your face when your heart is pure. But the answer is not that you're cursed. It's that you're called. They knew. They knew you were called. And they responded in fear. Not everyone who fears you will show it with hostility. Some will act overly nice, but keep you at arm's length. Some will smile in your face, but withhold their true support. Some will pretend not to see your value, even when it's obvious, because validating you would be an admission that their intuition was right. So they downplay your gifts. They laugh off your insight. They tell you to be realistic, to calm down, to know your place. But inside, they're watching you closely. Because deep down, they know you're not like the rest. And neither are your battles. That's why your life hasn't been easy. That's why you've carried burdens others can't see. Because you were born with a purpose that would threaten the very structures trying to survive off your silence. But now, you're waking up. Now, you're beginning to see the patterns. You're beginning to realize that their fear was never really about you. It was about what you represent. A new voice. A new way. A shift in the atmosphere. And they were hoping you would never notice. But here you are. Eyes open. Heart ready. And the truth finally sinking in. You were never the problem. You were the answer walking among people still addicted to the problem. You were never too much. You were exactly what this world needed. Just too soon for those who weren't ready to change. And that's why they feared you. Because they knew who you were before you did. The awakening. Realizing you're the chosen 1 inch. There comes a moment, sometimes after years of confusion, silence, and suffering, when the fog begins to lift. It doesn't happen all at once. It starts with a feeling, a whisper, a nudge in your spirit that something about your life has never been random. You begin to question the things you were taught to accept. You start seeing through the lies, the masks, the roles you were expected to play. And somewhere in that unraveling, you begin to awaken. Not to a fantasy, but to your truth. Your identity. Your calling. This is the beginning of the most terrifying and liberating chapter of your life. The moment you start to realize you are the chosen one. At first, you resist it. Because being chosen doesn't feel glorious in the beginning. It feels heavy. It feels lonely. It feels like responsibility you never asked for. You don't feel powerful. You feel like a target. You don't feel divine. You feel broken. You question whether you're qualified, whether you're crazy, whether it's all in your head. Because everything around you, and everyone you know, is still operating in the world you're trying to wake up from. You want to go back to sleep. But something deep inside won't let you. That's how you know it's real. The calling won't let you rest. It disrupts your comfort. It breaks your attachments. It pulls you away from everything that no longer serves your highest truth. You lose friends. You lose opportunities. Sometimes, you even lose your mind for a season. Because awakening is not peaceful at first, it is war. A war between who you were trained to be and who you were born to become. A war between the familiar and the divine. A war between your fear and your destiny. But the more you resist, the louder the voice becomes. The more you try to conform, the more you feel like you're dying inside. Until one day, something breaks, and you can't pretend anymore. You can't laugh at jokes that are rooted in lies. You can't tolerate conversations that numb your soul. You can't chase validation from people who never saw you to begin with. You can't wear the mask. You can't shrink yourself to make others comfortable. Because the truth inside you has become too loud, and the price of pretending has become too high. You begin to remember, not in your mind, but in your spirit. You begin to recall what you came here to do. The veil begins to lift, and suddenly, all the pain makes sense. All the rejection, all the trauma, all the nights you cried in silence. It wasn't punishment. It was preparation. You were being carved, refined, stripped of everything false so that only your truth would remain. And now that the truth is rising, everything false around you is crumbling. This is the awakening. When you no longer run from yourself, but toward yourself. When you stop asking for permission to exist. When you realize that the system that made you feel small was built to stay intact only if you stayed asleep. But you're not asleep anymore. And that makes you dangerous, in the best way. Suddenly, your voice starts to change. There's a new authority in your words. A fire in your eyes. You no longer just talk. You declare. You no longer just exist. You radiate. People start noticing. Some are drawn to your light. Others are repelled by it. But you don't need their approval anymore. You've tasted truth, and you're not going back. This is when you realize, being chosen doesn't mean being better. It means being burdened with a divine responsibility. You were chosen not for comfort, but for impact. Not for applause, but for alignment. You were chosen to break cycles, to heal bloodlines, to restore what generations lost. You were chosen to say what others are too afraid to say, to see what others refuse to see, to carry what others dropped. That's why your path has been so different. That's why your pain has been so deep. Because your purpose is that big. But purpose doesn't come wrapped in gold. It often arrives in ashes, in loss, in betrayal, in failure. Because those moments strip you down to the core, and only then can you rise with authenticity. The people who awaken are not the ones with the easiest lives. They are the ones who went through hell and still found their soul intact. They are the ones who were buried alive but refused to die. They are the ones who bled in silence, who walked alone, who chose truth over popularity, and who kept going when they had every reason to quit. You are one of them. You didn't ask to be, but you are. And now you see it. It's in the way you feel deeply. It's in the way you question what others blindly accept. It's in the way your heart breaks over injustice. Your spirit aches when you're not aligned. Your soul lights up when you speak truth. You are not here by accident. You are not ordinary. You are not here to blend in. You are here to disrupt, to challenge, to create, to awaken. You are here to remind others of what they've forgotten, to shake the world out of its numbness. And that kind of mission doesn't come without enemies. That kind of light doesn't go unnoticed. That kind of soul doesn't go untested. But no matter what you've lost along the way, nothing is more powerful than what you've found, yourself. This is your awakening. This is the beginning of your true life. Not the life they told you to live, not the path they planned for you, but the destiny that was written in your soul before you ever took your first breath. You were born for this moment. You were born for this truth. And no matter how hard it's been, you're still here, which means your mission is still alive. They may have known before you did, but now you know. And that changes everything. The opposition, why they fear you. Once you awaken, you begin to see the opposition more clearly, not just outside you, but also around you, and sometimes even within you. The moment you start stepping into your truth, the energy shifts. The smiles change. The rooms feel different. Some people grow quiet when you enter. Others grow louder, more defensive, more reactive. What you're witnessing is not paranoia. It's not ego. It's not delusion. It's the unveiling of a fear that has been present all along, a fear of your becoming. They fear you because you no longer fit the mold they crafted for you. You're not controllable anymore. You don't need their approval. You're not asking to be included. You're not seeking permission to speak. And in a world built on silent obedience, that kind of freedom terrifies people. They can no longer manipulate your guilt. They can't twist your insecurity. They can't shame you into submission. And so, they resort to opposition. But let's be clear, this fear is rarely spoken out loud. It comes in whispers, in cold shoulders, in backhanded compliments, in carefully crafted criticism masked as concern. It hides behind religion, behind tradition, behind culture. It wears the face of family. It dresses itself in logic. And yet, if you pay attention, the pattern is always the same. The moment you rise, resistance follows. The moment you claim your voice, they try to silence it. The moment you walk in purpose, they question your intentions. And the moment you become powerful, they paint you as dangerous. That is the cost of spiritual awakening in a sleeping world. When you begin to see through illusions, those who live by illusion will see you as a threat. When you break free of your chains, those still wearing theirs will be offended. They will accuse you of being arrogant, when in truth, you've simply learned to stop apologizing for your existence. They will call you rebellious, when in truth, you've chosen alignment over blind conformity. They will say you've changed, and they're right. You've outgrown the version of yourself they were comfortable controlling. This is the moment when many chosen ones fall into confusion again. You wonder, why are they turning against me? Why are they attacking when I've done nothing wrong? Why are people I love so uncomfortable with my growth? And the answer, as painful as it is simple. Your growth reminds them of their stagnation. Your truth exposes their compromise. Your freedom confronts their captivity. And most people would rather destroy what exposes them than face what they've been avoiding. So don't take it personally. It's not about you. It's about what your presence provokes. You didn't ask to threaten anyone. You didn't wake up just to cause disruption. But your awakening is disruption. It disrupts false narratives. It disrupts dysfunctional systems. It disrupts power structures that only thrive when people stay asleep. That's why they fear you. Because you carry a vibration that doesn't match their comfort zone. You carry light, and light always exposes darkness, whether you intend to or not. And here's where it gets even more difficult. Some of the opposition won't come from enemies, but from those closest to you. People you love. People you thought would celebrate your evolution. Instead, they distance themselves. They speak about you in hushed tones. They twist your intentions. And in those moments, you'll be tempted to shrink again. You'll be tempted to explain yourself, to justify your light, to go back to being who they liked, someone quieter, more agreeable, easier to dismiss. But you can't go back. Not now. Not after everything you've seen. Not after everything you've survived. You've come too far to dim your soul for people who refuse to expand their vision. You don't owe anyone comfort at the expense of your calling. And you certainly don't owe an apology for becoming the version of you that you were always meant to be. Because the truth is, if they really loved you, they would adapt to your growth. If they truly supported you, they would make room for your transformation. But when people only love the broken, silent, obedient version of you, their love was never for you. It was for your weakness. And now that you're strong, now that you see clearly, they no longer know how to control you. And that terrifies them. But let them be afraid. Let them whisper. Let them walk away. You were not chosen to fit in. You were chosen to rise. And with that rise comes resistance. With that rise comes war. But you are not here to be liked. You are here to fulfill a purpose. And if that purpose makes you dangerous to the systems of oppression, so be it. If it makes you offensive to the comfort of the complicit, so be it. If it makes you a target, so be it. Because the price of staying silent is far greater than the cost of being opposed. Let them fear you, not because you are violent, not because you are evil, but because your light is unshakable. Let them fear the way you speak truth without trembling. Let them fear your refusal to play small. Let them fear your unapologetic walk with God, your untamed spirit, your unwavering faith in a vision they cannot see. Let them fear your love, because it is real. Let them fear your healing, because it breaks cycles. Let them fear your voice, because it carries the sound of awakening. And above all, let them fear you because they know, even if they'll never say it out loud, that you were chosen. And now that you know it too, there's nothing they can do to stop it. Rise into your calling, becoming what they feared. Now that you see the truth, the real question remains, what will you do with it? You know who you are now. You know what you carry. You know why they feared you. You've seen the rejection. You've felt the weight. You've tasted the loneliness. But you've also awakened. And with awakening comes a choice, to keep hiding or to rise into your calling. This is where the chosen separate themselves, not through superiority, not through arrogance, but through surrender, surrendering to the mission that called them from the beginning. Because once you know, truly know, you cannot unknow. You can't go back to playing small, even if you wanted to. The illusion has shattered. The old world doesn't fit you anymore, and your silence is no longer an option. You were never meant to live a comfortable life. You were meant to live a consecrated one, a life of purpose, a life of power, a life that disrupts darkness and brings healing to the broken. That's why your pain was so precise. That's why your story is so complex. because you are carrying something holy. And now is the time to stop apologizing for it. Step into it. Step into your authority, into your anointing, into the very thing they tried to convince you to abandon. Because the moment you do, you become everything they feared, not because you seek vengeance, but because you become undeniable. They can no longer ignore you. They can no longer dismiss you. You're not the wounded version they once saw. You are healed. You are whole. You are walking in power, not pain. And that changes everything. They feared your awakening, and now it's here. They feared your confidence, and now it cannot be shaken. They feared your clarity, and now you see with spiritual eyes. You see through the lies, through the manipulation, through the noise. You see the battlefield for what it is. And more importantly, you see your place in it. This is the time to rise. Not quietly, not timidly, but boldly. You don't need validation. You don't need consensus. You don't need everyone to understand. The chosen are rarely understood in their time, but they are always remembered because they leave a mark. They shift the culture. They break the cycles. They carry a light that refuses to be put out. And now, that light is blazing through you. You were never here to be liked. You were here to be sent. You were here to shake the ground, to bring truth to places built on lies, to challenge systems that feed on silence, to call the lost out of the shadows, to remind people of who they are, even if they hate you for it. That is your assignment, and it's not for the faint of heart. That's why God had to build you in fire. That's why He had to break your heart, refine your spirit, and bury you in seasons of silence, not to destroy you, but to prepare you. Because what's ahead requires someone unshakable. And now, that someone is you. When you rise into your calling, you don't become louder, you become clearer. You speak with authority because you've lived it. You move with purpose because you've bled for it. You walk with power because you've earned every scar. This isn't theory for you. It's not empty words. This is the life you've survived, the pain you've endured, the purpose you've embraced. So rise. Rise into what they feared you would become. Rise without apology. Rise without shame. Rise without waiting for a room full of people to approve of what God already confirmed in you. You don't need their permission. You already have divine permission. That's why they sensed it before you even knew it. You were marked from the beginning. And now it's time to live like it. Walk like it. Speak like it. Lead like it. Because the world doesn't need more noise. It needs voices. Voices that carry truth, that carry healing, that carry heaven into every room they enter. That's you. That's what you were always meant to be. And now that you're awake, it's time to walk boldly into the very thing they hoped you'd never realize, your divine authority. You're no longer becoming what they feared. You are what they feared, not because of who you're against, but because of who you finally stood up to be. You are no longer hiding, no longer shrinking, no longer seeking approval from systems that were built to reject you. You are standing tall, standing free, standing chosen. And that makes you unstoppable. Because chosen ones don't move with ego, they move with clarity. They don't chase platforms, they build altars. They don't mimic the world, they transform it. And that's exactly what you were born to do. So go do it. Speak the truth. Live the truth. Be the truth. And let the fear they once projected become the fuel that reminds you of who you really are. Because now you know. You're not broken. You're not cursed. You were chosen, and the fear was always confirmation.